Only ones.
Promo Wrestling Pod, episode number 4, despite all the odds, despite the mountain that was ahead of Mullins and I, somehow we looked at it, trudged our sorry asses through it, and we're here with the 4th episode. Thanks for the positive feedback. We just had Matt Minnick on. We continue our trail of guests today.
And he forgot his wife as well, Chelsea.
Oh, and you're right.
The Monarch.
This is why I have Matthew Mullins on hand. That's why we are co-hosts, because I'm an idiot, and Matthew Mullins can correct me on that, and then I can tell him not to play around with leather, and he can take, he could heed my advice.
Very funny. There's already enough jokes that came from that.
How's your title belt? Which we're repping the big gold today, I see. Big gold on Thursday evening. How are you, Matthew Mullins?
Good.
You're taking care of business. People have been using the hashtag Stop the Leather. Have you stopped the leather?
I guess.
Well, look at you. You're listening to direction. This is a big step. Go Mullins! This promo wrestling pod is already taking strides, leaps and bounds, and we're making a difference in people's lives and in the lives of innocent cows that Mullins tries to butcher with butter knives. Joining us today is one of the most active members of the promo wrestling community. Talent seeps out of this guy. We wanted to get him on early. We wanted to get him on right away because, hey, when you got someone this active, this good, you want to get to know what they're saying, especially how we've been talking about the theory behind promo wrestling, the history behind promo wrestling, what it means to people. Well, we've got someone on who knows it, understands it, and is willing to share it. Ryan Steinberg, welcome to Promo Wrestling Pod.
Thank you, Brett. I appreciate it. It's nice to be here, and I appreciate the kind words. I love the podcast thus far. Hopefully we don't let them down.
I don't think we will. I think with your with your experience, everything you've been doing, I think we've got a lot to cover. I think we've got a lot to talk about. I know I've been really excited about this one. Mullins, he's been excited about this one. We've been chatting about it for the whole week. You've got such an interesting perspective. And before we get into all that, I want to ask, personally, how did you get involved in promo wrestling? I'm going to be asking all our other guests this, but hey, curious to see, how did you get your start?
It was almost, organically, like among, I want to say 15 to 20 people leaving Yup, I Like Wrestling, which is just a community of like thousands of people just talking about wrestling. But it was a troll group of people who were getting blocked from Yup, I Like Wrestling. And it was called the Kayfabe Connection. And there was probably like 200 people, I want to say, at that time. And it was started by Fernando Manalili, Kel Evans, and Manuel Garcia. And with that, one night randomly, we were just talking shit to each other, and somebody said, hey, let's throw a promo out, who can cut the promos, and people commented. I was one of the people, and Fernando made the post, and it was history from there. That night it was just on the TKC page, and him and I went for the world championship. He just was like, we're gonna have a world championship match. Anybody who wants to take me on for the world championship, we'll have the people vote on the best promo. And I'm like, man, I can take you out. I've never done it before, but I've watched wrestling my entire life, and I've almost like studied it. So I just did it, and overnight, I woke up the next morning and found out I won, and he wasn't too happy with that. And somehow Kel, I think, took over the page, and Fernando left and created the PPF and added me and a bunch of other people, and I remained the world heavyweight champion. And my first defense was Manuel Garcia.
How long ago was that? How many were, I'm sure we're talking years, but how long
Yeah,
ago?
it was that picture that was just posted in PWA. I was talking to Jeremy Clunky who posted it, and we were talking about what, because he was there from the beginning in the TKC, and we were talking in February was the TKC, and in March was the PPF of 2015.
So that's amazing. And so at that time, did you guys have any knowledge of the no DQ group at all and how that was forming, or were
I
these
didn't. I didn't at
okay?
all. I didn't know it existed anywhere else. I thought it was just us organically just putting shit together and having fun with it.
Well, it seems like, I mean, at least even from my experience, maybe even Matthew, I don't know if you know, but it seems like they were two separate entities formed almost at identical times. Uh, that's amazing that happened. Um, so just out of that, so you get your start there in PPF. You're the world heavyweight champion. How were your first few promos? I mean, this is really unlike anything a lot of us do in our day-to-day lives. I mean, unless you're an auctioneer or you're a rap battler or I don't know what other profession would call along the lines of this type of stuff. But how'd you find your early days of promo wrestling?
You know, my promos were shorter and more sweet. I would say probably around a minute and a half to 2 minutes almost every time. And a lot of it was what I bring, you know, with my wordplay. I focused a lot on that. And, you know, just ending it strong at that time, but also building my opponent to where I don't want to bury them and make people want to see that they have a chance in either defeating me or just, you know, coming up short. But every time I would defeat somebody, they would get pissy and quit right after and come back a couple weeks later.
Some things never change. Before we move on, though, I have to ask because I'll forget if I don't. You mentioned something I think is really critical in promo wrestling, and that is the ability to get your opponent over as well as yourself. Like a good wrestling match, you're going to make the opponent look just as good, if not better than you are. And in turn, it's going to create a stronger match, a stronger program. Now, it sounds like you figured that out early on. Is that something you picked up from wrestling? Was that just something natural? Where and why'd you emphasize that?
That's something I learned from Chris Jericho, his book, his first book. You know, a Lion's Tale. I forget the exact name, but basically he talks about doing promos in the early stages and how he'd bury the opponent and basically not make it seem like he was just going to crush them and it was a squash match. And somebody basically, I forget who talked to him in the back, but who told him that people aren't going to pay to see people get squashed if they don't see there's a chance in any way, especially if you're a heel. They want to see that you're going to get your ass kicked. They want to see that, you know, they have a chance. You build them up. You make it credible. You don't want to deplete the credibility in any way to the match. You want to, you know, make it seem as important as any other match on the card. Even the main event, you want to steal the show as much as possible with what you can. Just get the attention and the focus on you and your opponent, and try to tell a story if you can. In doing that, I notice, you know, people, you know, with naming moves, giving moves away, what they're going to do in the middle of the ring. I see that as kind of giving your strategy away or your plan, or even in a way you could play a mind game and tell them you're going to be doing these moves and not do any of them at all. So, you know, there's certain things you do. You know, in my promos, you'll notice I never really mention my moves at all. I couldn't say there's maybe one promo I've ever mentioned my moves. I usually focus on my opponent, try to tell a story of their motive, why they're trying to get, you know, their comeuppance, and if they're going to do it or not, and why they can step to me. And a lot of it, you know, is I have an arrogant attitude with Steinbomb and also Billy Preston, which, you know, accentuates my personality in certain ways too.
Well, that's one of the things I was going to say is you are one of, I would say, the best in the business at telling that story, at making sure that there's that foundational level of understanding, why am I cutting this promo? Why is my opponent cutting this promo? Because otherwise it's jibber jabber. It's useless. But you definitely have captured that. So I'm not surprised that you picked it up early. So that was the early days of PPF, and you're kind of continuing on, going on from there. How did that transform? How did that sort of evolve? And I'm assuming like there's eventually had to have been some sort of transition between the two communities. How did that start to unfold?
Well, Dylan, well, not Dylan, I'm sorry, Fernando, he started adding people to the group. He started just feeling his way out there and finding these other promo groups like CPW, PWA, and in that he would add people such as Legion and Dylan Mays to PPF, and they would kind of scout people. And I had praise from Dylan since the moment he saw me, as well as Legion. They always had my ear, and with that, there's certain times at the beginning we had a booker named Brandon, and basically he would book everything, and he'd be one of the judges, and he had to step away. But at the time, Manuel would bring people in as well. So it was like Fernando and Manuel bringing people in from other communities and them inboxing me about these other groups, but I wouldn't go anywhere else. I was loyal to PPF for a good solid probably 10, 11 months. I had a 9-month reign as the world heavyweight champion in PPF and undefeated. People came in, and I had some good feuds out of it. I'd say probably some of my best feuds were with Stalker Mike, Monsta, and a memorable one was with Thomas Austin. When I first met Thomas Austin, he came into PPF. I think Manuel brought him in, and him and I didn't mesh well at all at first. Not even a little bit. We butted heads. And I was the world champion, and he came into my federation like he owned it. So from there, him and I talked a lot of shit. We had good hype for about 2 to 3 weeks in our match. And the week coming up to our match, he saw the writing on the wall. It was my home federation. And he was like, I feel like it's basically, to him, it was like I'm just jobbing out to, everybody's all about Steinbomb here. They don't know me. It's my first match here. It's a world heavyweight championship match, and they don't know me. He's just getting over. I remember his second promo there was a out of character promo, just to introduce himself. And it was awesome. So much, like, just getting to know that person, seeing that aspect of him, as opposed to just like that full frontal in your face attitude that he does right off the bat, and not knowing him outside of that and getting that as your first introduction. And I said something personal on his page that was very rude and offensive to him on Easter one day. And him and I had some words, and we blocked each other. Today, him and I are like best friends. We talk all the time. He's my brother. He's awesome. When I came to PWA eventually, he was there, and I had to I had to face what I said, and I apologized, fessed up, and I owned up to it, and we talked and became great friends from it.
Thomas Austin is one of those guys who, I don't think you're the first one who, when you first encounter Austin, because he's got such a larger than life personality, and he projects himself, like you said, volume up to 100. And I think a lot of people just, I don't want to use the word intimidated, although that might be the correct word, but I think a lot of people, it can be that batting of heads, right? But I think that's a really good story of how, you guys had that animosity. There was differences. Ultimately through it, you apologize, you guys see each other. Now, hey, what'd you guys realize? You have all these similarities. That's what I just said
True.
With the Minnick podcast, is anyone doing this, we have more similarities than we have differences. Political affiliation anything, how you view climate change, how you view, I don't know, hunting, whatever it is. It doesn't matter in promo wrestling. And that's such an interesting story. I'm glad you shared that, especially with someone like Thomas Austin, who there are a lot of people who fall into that category of, oh, I'll never like that guy. But hey,
I was there.
you dissed him on an Easter Sunday.
Oh man, I thought he posted it. Well, I thought he posted it on the PPF page, and I was like, "What the fuck," you know? And I was in a bad mood. I think it was early, and sometimes when I'm in a bad mood, I spout off at the mouth, and I don't bite my tongue sometimes, and sometimes I wish I would, and that was one of my times. And it was his personal page, and when I found that out, I deleted the comment hours later. But we had words and blocked each other.
But eventually came together.
Yeah,
That's
and I can get to that point once we get to me going to PWA.
Before we bridge that gap, Mullins, you said you had something to ask.
Yeah. You know, UPW just brought Cybo back. What's the chances of PWA doing the same?
It's a good question. I've been approached a couple times. Well, I'd say like 3 times by Cybo, or not Cybo, but people who Cybo's reached out to him, have me unblock him, and I like Cybo. I have like a soft spot in my heart for Cybo, but the reason I blocked him is more for protection of myself and my job and my family, and not to put myself out there. And from what I saw him do, it was putting people out there and not a good light. And it's forgivable, and I forgive him, but I can't put myself out there. And I don't mind bringing him in. I'm in UPW and I'm competing, and I need to unblock him. And I already told those 2 or 3 people that I would unblock him. I've been busy. I, own the federation. I work full time, and I got a family. So, and I compete like in 4 different places constantly. So, I got to do that, and I'll probably do that tomorrow. But, and I've already said, I think I told Matt Minnick the other day that I would unblock him because he reached out to me about it. And I have no hard feelings towards Cybo, but the co-owner of PWA.
At the time, I think Cybo was just feeling rejected.
Yeah,
from the community.
I totally understand.
He finally found someone that would, listen to him and that actually agreed with some of the stuff that he does.
Yeah. Took advantage of him, unfortunately. And he's easily, unfortunately for him, when somebody has his ear, he will talk, and they'll use him and I've talked to Steinbomb on many occasions, and I've brought him in and I've protected him and I've stuck up for him in certain situations. You know what I mean? And somebody took advantage of him, and it's unfortunate. And it wasn't just once; it was twice, weeks after each other. And it's a rough subject. It's not just me though. I don't mind bringing him in. If the community of PWA wants to bring Cybo in, if they'll accept Cybo being in and not be disgruntled about it, I am perfectly okay with that.
Now, Cybo's an interesting situation because, and even the whole EFED TMZ, which I hate even mentioning that group because I think that is in the opposite of the spirit of what we're trying to do with this community, which is to encourage openness, encourage people to, hey, I don't care if you're going to post a picture of CM Punk and do a little bit of a write-up promo, if that's the gateway to something where you're going to express yourself more. So I don't like groups that, take screenshots of that and try and bash you for it. I think that's the opposite. But it's an interesting situation. And how do you view, again, we're going to get into the transition of how you got into PWA, but before we move on to that, as a Fed owner, how do you sort of balance that discipline of, has this competitor gone too far? Has he not? We're in the lines.
That's a great question. It's almost like a situational aspect where depending on the situation, you really have to make the judgment and base it on how disgruntled your roster is. what happened in the situation and who the person is and how many times you've given them the chance. If you've had words with them, do you talk to them personally? Did you talk to them personally hours before something happened? Did you talk to them personally for the first time in a while, or do you talk to them personally all the time? You know what I mean? It really depends on a lot of subjects and who's in your roster and how they feel about this person, and does this person talk shit all the time about the roster and people don't know that that person's just in character, you know, and that happens all the time. You know, John Walton's a perfect example of that. The whole time I've owned PWA, John Walton is shit all over me, and I understand the game. And when I talk to John Walton, and I'm sorry to just throw you under the bus like this, John Walton, but you're a sweetheart when I talk to you personally. You know what I mean? Like, you're fine, you're kind. You know, we talk about our families and everything, but when it's on the page, people don't know that. It's in character, and he shits all over me all the time, and that's fine. As long as you're having fun with what you're doing and you get that escapism from your reality that you're trying to escape from through this game that we play, and you're having a great time doing it, even if it's at my expense, that's perfectly okay.
Is that a lesson that you kind of knew going in, or is that something you learned? I know personally,
No.
at first, I thought everything, you know, right at first, right? I remember my first feud with Baron. I almost took it to a degree at a personal level. I think he might have even too. And then eventually, you know, you kind of get wise to the business and whatnot. Is that how it worked with you?
For me, I had well, at the end of my PPF run, I had a month of booking it. I got a little taste of what it is, but that was nowhere near jumping into my PWA run. And before I went into my PWA run as booker, I helped Monster book some FPW for a good month, like right before when I was approached with the PWA offer and everything. So that's when I jumped ship for that. But coming in as PWA booker at that time when I took over and assisted Mikey Madsen in really running the ship, I got shit on pretty hard, and I didn't really know how to take it. And luckily Mikey was there, and I talked to him just when I thought it was like, hey, is this guy really hitting me? And he was like, man, he'd tell me every time, they're just in character, no worries, just play it up and let them have fun. And, you know, you just learn how to do it and just roll with it and brush that dirt off your shoulder and keep going.
It's a hell of a good point. Well, let's talk about that. You mentioned the transition from PPF to FPW to PWA. Talk us through that. How did that unfold, and how did those opportunities kind of present themselves?
Through controversy. Basically, my last PPF World Heavyweight Championship match, one of the judges, PPF did things a little different. They judged the hype promos and involved them into the main promo that you did. And it wasn't like you got 1 point toward your main promo. It was like your hype promo got considered against their hype promo. Like, you went for one for one with the hype promos. And one of the judges didn't watch all the hype promos and just watched the match promo and gave it to me. And it was against Stalker Mike, and he wasn't too happy, and he quit. And the booker, at the time, he had a lot of personal issues going, and he had to step away, and he's like, I have no time to do this. I can't watch. I can't judge. It's not happening. I'm sorry. The next day, they said, hey, how about we do this? Stalker Mike, you get a promo. Ryan, you get a promo. We'll judge those. I'm like, all right, let's do this. Stalker Mike wasn't too happy about that. He said I put all my creativity and my hard work into those hype promos. We told the story, and we did, and it was an awesome story. And I could understand his perspective, but at the same time, he had to understand we had a match. And if he was going to be pissed off that I won based on how it happened, then let's do it this way. Let's have your second chance. He didn't want to do it, and the next day, Booker B stepped away, and Fernando approached me with an offer saying, I don't know who to go to. I don't have time to book PPF, and you're the world heavyweight champion. You've been there since the beginning, and I trust you. And in doing so, if you want to take over Booker, you have to relinquish the world heavyweight championship. So I relinquished my World Heavyweight Championship after 9 months, undefeated in my first run ever doing promos. And I didn't know what it was to taste a loss at that time because I never lost. But tasting it later, I learned how to take the loss and make it get over with your character and go further with it and not let it disgruntle you and just learn from it. So I took over as booker of PPF, and I had personal issues going at the time. That happened about 3 weeks after. And at that point, I had to step away, and I quit entirely doing promos. I quit booking, just stepped away altogether. But I was on the page, and I'd watch. And I got my shit together 2 or 3 months later. I came back. I didn't retire. I just stepped away. And I came back, and I basically came back on the page, did some promos. And at this point, Dylan really had my ear along with Legion. And Dylan Mays is who I'm referring to. And he messaged me a lot. But I get messaged a lot by a lot of different owners. But Dylan was one that I trusted. He was probably the only guy out of all the owners that really hit me up. And it was every owner from every federation that you can think, you know, Eric Jesse, Michael Glaysnap, you know, everybody hit me up. There's even people I can't even name because they're federations I'm not familiar with at this time because I didn't go there. So I jumped ship over to, and not only that, but, you know, I have to say at this time when I came back to PPF, there was new blood in PPF that grew from PPF. And there's originals from PPF that are flourishing today like Monster, Wormwood, WM3, Killjoy. And these are two people that, when I came back, were the fresh blood in PPF. And I didn't know how to take him. And Killjoy wasn't a competitor. He was the manager of Monster. And me and Monster had a feud because Monster never beat me. And every time I beat him, and it was twice, he'd be pissed off and he'd leave. So that happened with everybody except for Jeremy Klunky and Bryson Romano are the only two people out of everybody that I beat that didn't get pissed off and leave. And I don't consider Thomas Austin getting pissed off and leaving because our match never actually happened at PPF. It was that week and then he left right before it. And I was like, what the fuck's going on? So, you know, that at that point I came back and I came to PWA February of 2016, like about a year later from when I started doing it in PPF. And at that point, I did my debut in PWA, and I didn't believe calling out the world champion right off the bat because I like to take people on a ride from the bottom to the top. And some people might say, you know, going for the lesser titles, why are you doing it? But it's on the road, on the journey, to get people on the ride to believe that you're worthy of that World Heavyweight Championship, to believe the credibility that you have when you're carrying it. And the first match I ever had, I was World Heavyweight Champion. So I didn't want to do that. You know what I mean? I wanted something different. I've already achieved that somewhere else. I wanted to just get over and have people believe in me. This is a fresh territory. Some people know me because they've been in PPF, but I had introduced myself all over again.
You know, that's such an interesting take, and I noticed a similarity and a difference there. I want to touch on the similarity first, then we'll get into the difference real quick, because the similarity I noticed is you took time off. I've taken time off. Matthew Mullins has taken 16 separate retirements time off.
I don't think it's been that many.
7, right?
Yeah, 7. Maybe it was 7.
But it's that many. Well, maybe it was because early on, I retired a lot early on.
You sure did. Anyways, but I'm sure you guys will probably agree. I want to see if you agree. I compare it to, like, you know, you start promo wrestling, you're right in the thick of it, you're right in the heat of it. I consider it like you're in a battlefield. You're fighting and swords are clashing. You can't even see outside of your own realm and you're just trying to survive. It's chaos. You eventually get burnt out. You take a step back, and I always consider that next time you come out, you don't go immediately back into the battle trenches. It's like you took a few steps on the hill to watch the battle being fought, and when you go in there a second time, It's like, okay, I have this all mapped out. Did you feel that same way when you came back in?
Yes, very much so. Like almost a strategy in a way. Like I know how things work. Like I understand it. I was somewhere else. This may be a new territory, but I understand the whole aspect of promo wrestling much better than I did when I was in PPF and what I want to accomplish in this new federation. And I went in as a tag team wrestler. And I was brought in. Edward Ludwig had my ear too. He was in PPF, watched me for a long time, and he's always telling me about PWA and how I needed to come there. And I came there, and him and I teamed up right away and created Limelight, and Steinbomb. And we captured those tag team championships, and he had to step away. And at that time, I brought in the Prophecy, which was a faction from PWA or PPF, sorry. And the Prophecy is still going strong in PPF or PWA today. And I brought them there. And at the time when I brought them there, Dylan Mays was doing exclusive contracts. And I was one of the people he wanted to be exclusive to PWA. And him and I talked for a good day and a half about me being exclusive because I was still in PPF. And Fernando Manalili, him and I were good friends at the time. Today, we haven't talked in a long time. And we're not friends today. But this is part of why we're not friends. Is I decided to sign on as exclusive to PWA and leave PPF, and he was pissed off at that, along with Kel Evans. And when I signed exclusive, I noticed I was got put more in the forefront, you know, and Dylan got a lot of people to sign on exclusive, and it pissed a lot of people off at the time. And then Dylan had some personal things going on, and CPW merged with PWA, and Jack Intensity was brought in along with Ishmael, and they did a draft. I was drafted. Great, awesome. But unfortunately, the draft sank in the tank, went straight down, plunged weeks later. What are you going to say, Matt?
Yeah, I remember that. It's right around the time that they merged. I left PWA because of the exclusive contract stuff.
Well, Mullins, how do you, maybe even before we get into that merge, that's a good topic of, interest, is exclusivity. That's a real hot topic. When PWA did it, I remember that. As soon as you said that, I was like, oh yeah, I sure as heck remember that, because that's all anyone could talk about. Mullins, I don't know if you've ever been, have you ever even, you left, you weren't exclusive. So your views, I'm assuming you believe that there probably shouldn't be exclusiveness.
Well, then I did.
Yeah.
But now with all these e-feds keeps popping up left to right, it's not a bad idea to a certain extent.
That's a good point.
So,
you're only going to be exclusive to that, but at the same time, if you're already in, certain feds, you're competing there, then you should be able to still be able to compete in those feds. But if a new fed comes up, then no.
So
I agree with that.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So when you make the decision to sign exclusively in PWA, what was sort of your thought process at that time? PWA, I remember, was very strong at that time.
Huge.
They were.
Dylan did amazing with PWA. I wasn't there at the creation, but when I came into PWA, it was huge. It was banging, it was popping. Every single week, Dylan was on there. He was active, and that's what you got to be as an owner and a booker. Is you got to be active day in and day out. You got to be on the page, and Dylan was, and he had people excited. He had the incentives going with the rankings. Did a lot of good things at that time, and that was a thing that made me think about signing on exclusive, along with me wanting to focus all my attention on PWA and getting myself over in PWA in a new territory and seeing if I can do what I did in PPF again, but somewhere else. And it doesn't have to be with the World Heavyweight Championship, because I've already lived that, that run. And I ended up getting World Heavyweight Championships other places, but PWA is a place I've never captured the World Heavyweight Championship, nor do I want to capture the World Heavyweight Championship, because I don't believe that the owner should have the World Heavyweight Championship. I believe that demoralizes the roster. And I also believe that depletes the reign and the credibility of the championship run that you have as an owner with your own federation as the world heavyweight champion. Prove that you can do it in another federation and that you're worthy of running with that world title. And that should be all that matters. It doesn't have to be in your own federation.
I agree. Mullins
That's
probably
my
learned Mullins probably learned that lesson the hard way.
Yeah, well, my whole ideal of it was early on. I was still early in my career. I made a stupid mistake awarding myself the world championship of my federation because I was going to go in for
I'm
this
sorry, I didn't mean to.
Baron, who at the time was the IPW world champion, who beat me in the tournament for the vacant IPW world title. It came down to me and him in the finals, and he beat me, and I was going to challenge him to this big title unification match. Unfortunately, that ideal never came to fruition, and
You
was a
became
waste.
champion. As the story goes.
I've never done that. Worst
Lesson learned.
ever.
So we have this situation where you come into PWA, you sign that exclusive contract, it's hot, personal issues with Dylan Mays start to pop up, we get this merger, obviously. Kind of talk us through that. That must have been, I was out of it a little bit. So.
Yeah, the merger was interesting. It was definitely unique. Monster at the time created FPW, Fearless Promo Wrestling, and this was done when Monster was given PPF and it was taken away, and he was booker and he brought people in and he was pissed off and he took the roster with him and ran over to Fearless Promo Wrestling, a page that he created, and it's still thriving today. I'm actually world heavyweight champion of that promotion for the second time right now. But it's a fun promotion. It's different, and there's a lot of good talent in that promotion that just compete in that promotion. They don't go any other place. But at the time, he had the Fearless Promo Wrestling, and he came with the CPW merger. It happened right after PPF merged with FPW. So Dylan was in PPF and he witnessed this, and I'm not sure if it gave him the idea, but it happened around the same time, and it was unique because I witnessed it. I was still on the page, didn't compete over there, and then I got thrown off the page, eventually blocked from the page. I'm back on the page now, but in doing so, I witnessed it crumble, and I got to know Jack Intensity in the process and became great friends with him. Brother of mine, he's awesome when you get to know him, but like a lot of people, he has that wall. It takes a long time to get that trust, and trust is a big thing in this business. You put yourself out there, and you like I say with Sibo, or Sibo, trust is a big part. But
True.
with that, when I witnessed the CPW merger fail, and I saw Mikey Manson or Jack Intensity take over as booker and Dylan step away as booker, and really Josh McClain helped Mikey Manson book the territory every week, and then I saw how they did it, and I got that bite to try it again from my taste of it in PPF. And I approached Monster, and I'm like, hey, and at this time, the PPF FPW merger failed as well. The brand split failed, and he brought everybody back over, and he ran the page, continued to run FPW. But I approached him, and I knew he ran it all by himself. And I said, hey, I got some ideas I want to do where I could just revamp your show, the entire process. If you want to just make me CEO of FPW, give me a chance. We know each other. You were the first match that I actually had, as world heavyweight champion. Him and I have a history. And as I told him, the one day I retire, the guy I'm going to retire to is against Monster, because all that history with Monster, a ton of respect for the guy. And, he let me go to FPW, and he gave me full control and said, I trust you, and you can do anything you want. I created new shows. I created Weekend Whiplash. I brought new things to FPW, and Dylan Mays was in FPW. And about a month later, Dylan approaches me and asks me if I'd be willing to step away from FPW and take over as management of PWA and booker of PWA out of nowhere. And I didn't expect it, and I thought about it, and I talked to Monsta about it before I made the decision. And he said, you know, it's a whole huge beast. It's a huge animal to tame. And if you think you can do it, I'm fully behind you and leading FPW, and I got you back. So I appreciated that. And I went over and I took over PWA with Mikey Manson. And at the time, Josh McClain stepped away too, because Dylan would come in and out based on his personal issues, coming in and out. And he couldn't put forth the dedication. Anybody that knows Dylan knows he has some of the strongest passion you could have for this business. And he does awesome things when he has his mind fully set to the Federation. I have witnessed it firsthand. But when he has his mind elsewhere, as other people who, you know, are bookers, it takes away from the Federation and how you want to run it, and depletes people's belief in the Federation. So I took over, and it, you know, like I said before, I got shit on for a good while. It took a while for people to believe in me. I made storylines. I took over in November of early November, late October of 2016 as booker with Mikey Manson. And Josh McClain did an awesome job with Mikey, but he had frustrations at the time with how it was ran there, how he'd be given full control and then have it taken away as anyone would. And Josh is awesome. Josh currently is one of my general managers of PWA for Friday Night Future Shock. So he's doing an amazing job too. So I'm
yes, he
you know,
is.
I'm very proud of how he's running that show. And at the time, I did well with PWA, and Mikey had personal things going on, and he'd be in and out. It'd be hard to do things without Mikey, and I'd always like to run things by Mikey. I'd always like to get Mikey's opinion before I ever made any decisions. And more weight was put on my shoulders, more and more weight. And then I was approached out of nowhere about a storyline of a private investor and how PWA is sinking in the tank money-wise. All our investments, all our funds have gone out the window. And we have a private investor who invested more than 50% and bought ownership from Dylan Mays. And at this time, in personal conversations, Dylan saw how I was running the page, and he privately told me that, you know, I can own PWA with Mikey Manson. But in this storyline, there'd be a private owner, a guest owner. And then one night, Mikey Manson and I were talking, and right at the same time, out of nowhere, we both said Jack Tunney. And it was almost like magic. And it was right after Rumble Wreckage, which was a a fantastic Royal Rumble like event we had at the beginning of January, and everybody competed. I got videos from everybody. I threw them out 10 minutes after each other. I posted every video, and I thought it was awesome. It was fantastic. But Jack Tunney came in right after that, and he disgruntled a lot of folks. He trolled a lot of people, pissed a lot of people off in the process, and became the president of PWA. At first, it was I was like the CEO or something like that, but eventually he became the president. And it was the same Jack Tunney from WWF. Don't get it twisted. Even though he may have passed, this was a reincarnation of Jack Tunney as himself.
Yeah, I know.
One of the I want to ask Mullins, because Mullins, you're reacting there. You're getting you're excited as a spectator. What were your thoughts when this was going on? Because you seem to be pretty.
It was like, what the hell, man? It's like, what? Funny. I mean, did like he did the Tiny Bunnies stuff.
Oh man, Tunney's bunnies got people so pissed off. All the women in PWA were flipping shit. Throwing tables everywhere. Just pissing all over the place.
Explain Tunney's bunnies for those who may not be in the know.
Well, first of all, in the process of right at the beginning, everybody wanted to know who Jack Tunney was. I got messaged by everybody in the whole place, just messaged me and messaged Mikey and just, who's Jack Tunney? And we wouldn't tell. Nobody know. Jack Tunney was the president of PWA. That's who Jack Tunney was. And that's what we would say. Who's Jack Tunney? He's the president of PWA. And leave it at that. But one day out of nowhere, we were talking, and we met with Jack Tunney, and we said, hey, how about we get a women's division? I was getting approached by women wanting to compete in PWA, and out of nowhere, he's like, Tunney's Bunnies. And he just posted a hashtag, Tunney's Bunnies. We're introducing a women's division to PWA. And the women of PWA will just prance around in wonderful matches. It was just elaborate and so comical, so fun to just watch. And it just, a lot of women got pissed off, a lot of men got pissed off in the process, a lot of people got pissed off. Tunney got banned many times and blocked and reported. I think there was about 10 or 15 Tunney accounts in all. And eventually we had to kill Tunney because people were getting so pissed off by him trolling and just, and there'd be hashtags, what would Tunney do? There would be, what was it? At the end of everything he'd post, it'd be hashtag Tunney, no matter what it was. Even in direct messages, and I seen these direct messages, and they were hilarious. I could tell you, like, some of these people would approach Jack Tunney with offers and things, and one ask who Jack Tunney is, and he'd play right into it, and it'd be fantastic. And after every single message, it'd be hashtag Tunney. Just play it up. So we had to kill him off because people were getting really pissed off. He'd get reported, and I was tired of creating accounts. I was tired of helping out and being like, hey, I'm creating accounts. And people have wondered who Jack Tunney is since Jack Tunney's appeared. And Jack Tunney's dead now, again. God rest his soul. But he's gone, and we were trying to figure out who killed Jack, or who caused Jack Tunney to retire, because he's not quite dead. He's dead, but he's gone. And we played it up to where he was bludgeoned nearly to death. And I approached a couple people, bounced ideas off of the private investor, and that private investor turned out to be Mike Currents. Money Mike Currents, the Hick, now owns PWA with me. We're partners in owning PWA. And awesome guy. Couldn't say enough good things about him. And somebody who fully envelops himself in his character, and his promos are awesome too. So he ended up being the private investor, and people today still question who Jack Tunney is. So it's just funny. It's funny. It's something I get asked a lot, or I've been asked a lot.
So Tunney's dead, but we maybe might see Tunney again.
There's a possibility.
Well,
there's a possibility.
With how excited Mullins was, I'm sure he wouldn't mind seeing that character again. Lightning in a bottle. Talk about, hey, any heat is good heat. Controversy creates cash. So that's actually, the Tunney's Bunnies thing makes me laugh. At the time, I probably didn't make too many, but that's
it made me laugh. It made the people, okay, Tunney wasn't just one person, I'll say that. And it made the people who ran the Tunney page laugh hysterically.
It's always good to poking the fire, especially in this little bit of a business. You always see the people that have the most fun. Justin Klein, Thomas Austin, these guys that just, poke the hornet's nest, because it doesn't take a whole lot to get this little community rattled up.
I'll say, I was one of the people who ran the Tunney page, and I'd pose comments as certain people. There's 2 other people who did it, but with that, I'd post comments trying to pretend to be people, including Thomas Austin. And I know how to play Thomas Austin pretty well in the comments because I'm pretty good friends with Thomas Austin. So I've watched how Thomas Austin trolled Dylan for quite some time when Dylan had his little run as Master in PWA at the beginning of the year, not really knowing if he was going that direction or not. And I trolled him as Tunney, and he went right off at the mouth. Tunney's Thomas Austin, straight over on the page. I woke up to, you know, Tunney is Thomas Austin the next morning. I laughed so hard. It was pretty funny.
Oh man, you could do so much just in capturing the spirit of a like. Oh, that's gold. So there we go. You have the Tunney thing. You're eventually forced to kill it.
Yeah.
Fortunately,
but Billy Preston, the fabulous Billy Preston, was the one who bludgeoned Tunney nearly to death, so it worked out in the end for me.
So there we go. Let's talk about that transition afterwards and what kind of has happened since. We're getting into really recent months here. So what's occurred since? How is PWA sort of morphed after that situation?
Well, I had more responsibility at work and just driving to different cities and stuff and taking up a lot of my time to where I can't book, staying up till like 2 every night, trying to keep the place going and keep the place flow, keep people active and happy, and have them have a nice, healthy, fun time where they can just release and get that escape. I couldn't do that anymore, and I approached Mike with an idea because at the time Mikey he stepped away. He hadn't been there in some time, so it was mainly me and Mike doing stuff. And I was booking as I did every week. I was posting results every week. I'd mainly bounce ideas off Mike, and he'd give me ideas, and we'd work the ideas in. But I was booking all the shows, and I'd bounce matches off him, and we'd both put things together. And I told him, I can't do as much as I've been doing, and I've been thinking, let's do a brand split. I know it wasn't successful before with CPWA merger, and here again, Michael Procopio, who is an awesome general manager, I will say, of Saturday Night's Adrenaline Rush, and I saw how he was the manager over at CPWA, or CPW at the time, because fabulous Billy Preston was in CPW, and I am good friends with fabulous Billy Preston. We talk a lot. So basically, Birdie told me that, Procopio had things and going, and I didn't know he had personal things. I just know he stepped away as the general manager. And I approached him and I said, hey, I didn't know why he stepped away, and I didn't ask. I just said, I'm doing a brand split. And originally, when I posted this and weeks before this, I approached Dylan Mays with the idea because I ran PWA and I owned it. And I said, and he approached me one morning saying how he wishes he never gave PWA to me. How he is very pissed off at himself. He's very upset that it ever happened, and he created it. And I understand where he's coming from because he has passion like none other. And when he wants it, he'll take it. And that's eventually kind of what happened. But before this, with this whole idea, I approached him when he talked to me about coming back to PWA and competing, or trying to get back on management, trying to get back to helping book PWA and make it great. And I was all about it because I knew where he was coming from. And I was like, all right, man, I want to do a brand split in a few months. And I'm thinking about making you a general manager or having you be a general manager. He was all about the idea, and his character took away, and he had storylines going that took away from that. And when I posted the post about the brand split, and I didn't approach Dylan at the time, and Dylan and I had words weeks earlier about his philosophy of this business mixed with my philosophy of this business, and they're completely opposite. Dylan looks at this like a business, like people should be held accountable for being late. And I'm not saying he does this in CPW, because he doesn't, but people should be held accountable, maybe deducted a point or a quarter point for being late. And I did not believe that in any way. And I told him, people are putting forth that effort, that time, that passion, that productivity, all that creativity. What's to you? What are you saying if you agree for that extension to take it away? Even if you approve the extension. And him and I had words, and I went straight into my philosophy and how I believe this should be as fun as possible for everybody. It shouldn't be people thinking this is a job or another weight on their shoulders. It should be something they should look forward to, and an escapism. And he left the management team, and I posted what I posted after approaching Mike with the brand split idea. And 2 nights later, the next night, I was kicked off the admin team in PWA, and Dylan was the only one on there, and he owned PWA again, and then blocked me from the page along with Mike. And everybody was pissed off. I didn't know what happened. I was like, all right, you want to play this? I gave forth all my effort and time to make PWA this monster of a machine that it is today. And I had this awesome idea with the brand split because my time is being reduced that I can dedicate forth to PWA. And I approached you as one of the people I wanted in the brand split, Brett, and you and I have barely talked. Like, this is like the first real conversation you and I had, as well as Matt. You know, we barely talk. We've talked in comments, but no like real personal conversations about promos or whatever. But I even approached Matt in being included in the brand, and I'm good with almost everybody in this business. I can count, there's less than 5 people in this whole business that I don't get along with, and they know who they are, and some people know who they are, and I'm pretty loudmouthed at times with how I feel about people if I don't believe in who they are or, you know, their credibility, or if I feel disrespected toward certain people, I definitely will go straight to the horse's mouth, or I'll comment on a post, you know what I mean? And if you want to see it and talk to me, let's talk and have some words. And there's about 3 or 4 people that don't talk to me because of that. And I don't talk to them, and that's perfectly okay. That's just how it goes, because I'm not looking for that drama. I'm not looking for that added weight. I'm looking for that escapism. But with this brand split and owning, like not having ownership of PWA, getting back to the topic, because I digress, I woke up the next day and I was busy at work. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't do anything at all. I had all kinds of shit thrown my way and fires put out at work, you know. And Mike messaged me, he's like, I'll take care of it. And a new page was created for PWA, and I was brought over and added and I was given the page as admin, and I was made owner. And then the entire roster from PWA came over, and I can't thank the roster enough. It meant the entire world to me. It humbled me in so many ways. Just the world like isn't a big enough compliment for how I felt when they all came over, because I didn't ask for them to. I was like, okay, you want PWA? I'll step away. You know, you can have it. I'll let you have it. I did my thing and I proved that I can do it. And that was perfectly okay with me.
Well, and, you know, I think that that's probably sort of, I guess you could look at it as a commending of, you talked about that philosophy of how you want to make it fun for people. You want to make it so that people don't feel like it's a chore. And in certain situations, with certain feds, it can at times, for me, certainly more so in the past. Now I'm in a good situation, but you know, having that proper philosophy, I think that was probably an endorsement by the roster more than anything, that, hey, this is a guy who gets why we're competing. I always appreciated that in a Fed owner. I wanted to know, as a competitor, that the person backing me understood my philosophy, understood, and you know, that I'm here to express creativity and have a little bit of competition. I don't need to be scolded. I don't need to be, you know, I try my best. We all have busy lives, and it sounds like you understand that. And you probably understand that because you yourself, you mentioned work, you mentioned your family.
It's yourself, happened to me.
Yeah, you have a busy
I've lived
life.
in other federations, though. I've, not to like say anything, but that happened to me in FPW. You know, I had an interference and points were taken away, and I didn't know about an interference being taken away, and I flipped shit. I was like, what the fuck, man? And then I like, just that kind of just gave me the thought process. I totally took out interferences in PWA, and I'm like, fuck that. Nobody's going to be like held accountable when they put forth all that effort. Even if, you know, somebody's opinion differs from another person's opinion and how good that promo was, doesn't matter. They still put forth and gave that time. So I recently brought back interferences because I pulled the PWA roster and everybody wanted them back. So I made rules, and that's what I like to do. Is I like to keep organization, and I don't micromanage, but I like to structure. I like to know how everything is going. I have my hand dipped in every single pool. You know, I've done every single part of this business. I came up as a promo wrestler. I saw how it was ran backstage, thrown on as booker, became owner of the business. And Matt Minnick with how he ran UPW, and I've became great friends with Matt Minnick because of Triple M, and Triple M was somebody who caught my eye very early on, and him and I became great friends early on too. A lot of good personal conversations, good guy. And he brought me and introduced me to Matt, and Matt and I talked about every day for months, and just about life, whatever. It didn't matter. It didn't have to be promo. And even today when we talk, it's not about promo wrestling. But him and I, when we talk and it is about promo wrestling, we create ideas like the Undisputed Hall of Fame. Even though it kind of failed, we had that idea, and he runs ideas past me. When the Disenfranchised happened early on, he brought it when I first started talking to him. And you know what I mean? He values my opinion as I do his. And I saw how he ran UPW. He has it structured in a way that kind of gave me the vision of how I want PWA. He has a 3-show program on UPW. And each program has about 15 people, I want to say, maybe a little bit more. And the matches aren't like PWA, because PWA's matches are about 8 to 10 every single week on both cards. So there's about 20 matches, maybe more, maybe a little bit less. But each UPW card has about, I want to say, 5 matches most. And with that, he has a whole reffing system and a structure. He has organization. And I saw that, and I talked to him. He said early on, with how you're running it, try to figure out some structure and organization so you don't have to do so much work, because you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders and you're doing everything, and you can't do it forever. It just gets too much. And I learned that the hard way, because I did everything. I judged every single promo. I ran the show. I booked. I posted results. I made sure they were posted on time. I reached out to people to judge. I did promos myself. I made sure other judges judged my promos. I didn't give a shit if I lost. I had fun doing it. But, I've had my hand in every single aspect of this business.
Well, and that type of workload, like you said, that'll take a lot out of you. And it almost gets into the sense of, I think that's like a lot of businesses, though. At first, you want it done in how you want it, but then eventually you can kind of get it to not where it runs itself, but where you have those systems in place. And PWA, as a competitor to there, I have to respect, like you said, it's very organized. Even when you posted the interference, the new rules regarding interference, I'm typically a competitor who's not a big fan on interference, but with your rules, I was like, you know what? That makes a lot of sense. I like that. And so it took something where I'm against that. But again, like you said,
I'm against it too. I don't want it. So I made rules to it that I could agree with.
Mullins, what are your thoughts on interference? Are me and Steinberg here out to lunch or what? He's just like, oh.
It is, I will say it's 1 a.m. over where I'm at. I'm not sure where you guys are at. I'm fine, though.
It's pretty much 1 a.m. here, too.
Mullins, what are your thoughts on interference? Do you, are me and Stein...
It could be good for, creating future feuds. Just depending on what type of the match it is, depending on... Anyone should just interfere for the hell of it, unless they have a legitimate reason to. And let's just say that they previously feuding with someone and they want to continue that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree completely. Everything should follow a logic in your story and whatnot.
Within your universe, just like a comic universe, everything should make sense within your universe. And in PWA, I don't like anything personal brought up at all. I like it to all be kayfabe. I like it to be creative. I like people to think outside the box, because it's real easy to take cheap shots. Think outside the box and bring the creativity, and that kayfabe, and create. Even if you don't like your opponent, approach them and bounce ideas off each other.
That's what I've always said too. There's so many places you can take a feud and a promo without having to delve into someone's personal life, unless, of course, hey, if you make that agreement with your opponent, all the power to you. But if you're trying to find something to do and you're getting this creative writer's block, message the person. people will talk. You could say, okay, well, maybe use this, maybe use this, and you never know.
I've been approached many times with ideas as a booker of characters, and I've given character ideas. I even threw stuff at Matt weeks ago with, 7M is what I wanted, like Eminem. That's all right, though. The perfect 7 is all right by me. Wake up at 7 a.m. every day and run 7 miles. 7 glasses of water.
7
be on time 7 times during that day and be late 7 other times. 7 different
7M.
places.
Mullins, why didn't you use 7M? Oh man, that's
the gimmick
gold.
that I gave him. That's the gimmick that I presented to him.
It didn't make no sense.
Oh, it makes sense. That's the most punniest, beautiful name ever. That would be such an over gimmick. Use 7M. Listen to what this brilliant man is telling you.
What I'm trying to do with the perfect 7 right now, just like the perfect 7 is just kind of in the turning heel phase. So I'm still trying to figure out where the hell I'm going with this.
Well, I got to tell you, if you ever get bored with the perfect 7, go to 7M because that is gold. You're sitting.
When the perfect 7 turns face. Well, somewhere down the line.
Maybe you should, and you could rap. You could do all sorts of things. 7 bars, that's great.
It could be beautiful.
It could be brilliant. I think that's a golden opportunity.
Lots of potential.
So you talked about structure and organization. Here we are in the present day. How do you look at UPW? How do you look at the Fed you're running? Are you pretty proud?
I'm proud of PWA. I'm very proud of PWA, and I compete in UPW, and I think it's ran awesomely. I think Matt keeps the structure flowing and keeps it going. I think CPW is ran great. Those are my 3 favorite organizations today, and I think FPW is right there with them. I think FPW each and every week, Monsta has posted results. He's never late. He's always with it ever since the very beginning, and he's still with it each and every week today, and he has people helping him, but UPW and is structured greatly for how they do it. And I told Matt a month or so ago when I first posted that brand split idea, and I said, UPW kind of reminds me of New Japan Pro Wrestling in a lot of ways. Just the way you guys are different. You guys accept different characters. You're more accepting of like Raccoon Boy getting over. You know what I mean? PWA is a little bit different. There's a lot of high rollers there that don't do those fancy gimmicks. It's more of a WWE type where we even have a developmental system in Sigma. And we send people there at the very beginning so I can get a feel for what they're about. And I have people there who help structure them and teach them how to do storylines, teach them how to build that character and get that character over and how they want it to be. And I got a couple coming up in the next couple weeks following the free preview. I've already approached those individuals and they know, and it will be announced when they come up. So it'll be made a big deal, and it'll be made to where I discuss with the general managers what show, and we've already discussed it, but we know what shows are going on. It's all structured, and it's already 2 weeks before it's ready to be. We already have it all planned out. And something happened this past week where I was approached by a person who couldn't compete in a match, and being how I was booker, it was hard for me. I didn't even think to get a hold of their general manager. I just changed the card myself. And Mike, always supporting me and everything. He's just like, you've been the answer and all to be all, and it's hard to get out of that phase. So I learned a lesson, and I told the general manager, next time I'm just going to send your person right over to you, and you can handle it, and I don't care what you do. So just have fun with it, and I'll just watch and enjoy the show. And right now I'm just trying to enjoy the fabulous Billy Preston and Steinbomb, and trying to really master both the gimmicks and keep them separate from one another as much as I possibly can. And when I first did Billy Preston, I debuted live. It was the first live promo I ever did, and first time I ever did Billy Preston, and it blew people's minds. They were expecting Steinbomb. It was pretty funny.
Well, let's get into that, because I mean, you've talked a lot about owning and running PWA and doing all of that, but you're also, as we talked about earlier, quite the competitor. and you have these distinct personas that, like you said, they're separate entities. How do you do it? What is your technique to sort of keep them separate, keep them fresh, and keep them both sort of creative and flowing?
Yeah, when I do more than one take, it's usually because I mixed a Billy Preston line into a Steinbomb promo, or a Steinbomb line into a Billy Preston promo, or somebody interrupted me and walked by. Those are usually the times I will retake the promos, because I do try to keep them separate. And with Billy Preston, I talk in an Australian accent for a good hour before I do the promo, just to myself about whatever. I'll go for a drive on my lunch, and I'll talk as just an Australian accent. And I used to watch Steve Irwin, and I used to joke around with people and be, crikey, mate, I'm going to grab him right behind the jugular, and then I'm going to present the hammer and the nail, and I'm going to hammer the sucker right in and show the croc what it's all about. And I just mess with people. And but I just had one day, Chad Bartlett, who I'm a huge fan of. I've been a fan of that guy since day one. He has an alternate persona, Stacy Galaxy, who I miss dearly. And that inspired me to create Billy Preston. I saw Chad, and I feel like I'm on Chad's level. And if I feel like I can compete with Chad at certain times, if I'm in the right frame of mind and I have the right motivation, I can be right on par with him. And I feel like that. And we beat each other in tag matches, and we beat each other in singles matches, just not as Steinbomb and Nukeface as in the singles matches. We beat each other as Stacy Galaxy and the fabulous Billy Preston. So he inspired me. Just seeing him do that and keep his two characters completely opposite of one another inspired me to do the same with Billy Preston and Steinbomb. And when I do Steinbomb promos, I have the one-liners, I have the wordplay. I like to be motivated. I like to know my opponents, and that's something that comes good with being a booker, and something that I'd recommend to anybody who wants to be successful in this business. Watch every match you can. And the reason I say that is because you'll eventually face that opponent, and you'll know every single attribute for that opponent, and you can use it against them. And I do it all the time. Mm-hmm. And that's because I watch all the promos, and because I'm owner of PWA, and I do it in CPW, I do it in UPW. I try to watch as much as possible, and I do it in FPW. And when I face those people eventually, I know what their gimmick is, and I have a story in my head and motivation to run with, and it makes my promo better because I have the fancy one-liners, I have the catchphrases, I have the wordplay, and I know that, but I don't like to rely on that. I want to tell a story, and I want people to be enthralled and enticed to watch.
You hit the nail on the head, and that's something I preach. I think that is something that should be promo wrestling 101. I don't know if it is with everyone. I mean, in a sense, it's kind of hard to, because there is so many feds, but if you keep your focus limited to a couple or three, then you should be able to do that, and you should be honing in and watching as many other promos as you can. Or like you said, not only are you going to be at a disadvantage in terms of what you can use, you might come across someone who you might not be familiar with, go, oh yeah, this is a cakewalk. And it's not a cakewalk, because they're actually very, very talented. And
Thomas Austin, PPF, me world champion. We were going head to head, but I didn't know shit about him, and I didn't use anything against him. I just used all my wordplay, and he recognized it, and he's always complimented me since day one on how good he thought I was, or am, or whatever you want to say.
It can happen. I mean, you have to try and stay on top of things. Even the new guys, and that's the best way to get people involved in this community. You'll see it sometimes where people come in, no one supports them, no one watches their stuff, and they fizzle out. They just go away.
Demoralizes them.
Yeah, it completely.
Like, Eric Jesse just posted in CPW, and I've had conversations with Eric, and Eric's a very wise man when it comes to promo wrestling. He likes to refer to himself as the god of promo wrestling. That's because he wrote the book on it. And basically, like he said, on a post, is just a like. It means the world to somebody. Mm-hmm. Makes them want to continue and make it that much better for themselves. It really just builds their confidence. And even a like, a love, whatever you want to do, just a reaction on a post, a promo, just even commenting, just put yourself out there.
Just any sort of support. I wouldn't be doing this today if my very first promo in IPW didn't get some love from Paul, didn't get some love from Kieran. There was some others. I wish I could remember. But, you know, but it was just, I specifically remember Paul going, holy shit. I was hooked.
Yeah,
And that's why. And it's as simple as that. Someone's very first promo, if you just take what, 2 minutes out of your day, even if it's at the end of the day before you go to bed, watch it and just, you know, even especially if you're experienced, give some advice. That's what I like about PWA. There's a lot of experienced competitors there, but you have that underbubbling of, you know, upcoming talent. And that's where it falls on the veterans to, you know, step in there and you like this community, you got to contribute back.
Exactly. And I have veterans in our developmental territory to help contribute to those people. And I've had people approach me, hey, I'm a little intimidated by the roster. You have huge names, biggest names ever in the promo game on both rosters, not just one. And that's something I wanted to do with the brand split, is put them on equal balances, because Friday Night Future Shock was before like the envisioned of the Prodigal division. And that's something Dylan hated about what I did, is I completely changed everything he created. I took out all his championships. I renamed him. I redid everything. I made it my organization, and he created it, you know. But that's what happens when you tell me you're going to give me something and you give me full control. But basically, what was I saying? I forget. Like I threw myself off.
About the veterans and how.
Oh yes. So like in our developmental territory, we have the Blueprint Carters there. Triple M's the world champion right now, and he's there in Sigma to help, give advice. He's there to, you know, when somebody steps up to that level, take that title from him. You know, Triple M's also the national champion in PWA on Saturday Night Adrenaline Rush. When, you know, and Triple M is a hard competitor. The first Triple M gave me my first loss I ever tasted, ever. And I accepted it. And, you know, I know if I, you know, of course, Triple M's fantastic. I lost fair and square. I brought my A game, but he brought his too, you know. And I recognized that, and I rolled with it, and I learned from it. And I talked to Triple M. We got to know each other. And it took me, I want to say, like 4 or 5 times, and I finally beat Triple M with Billy Preston and Steinbomb. So I was happy with that. I was like, it finally happened. But it took me a while.
Well,
it was like a bucket list.
It's one of those situations, you know, where
he's hard. And you know, like you said, the veterans giving advice, they're there to, and it's like any in the match, you want to work with those veterans. And for a while in WWE, they didn't want the veterans, and the young, it just got stagnant. It got the same with everybody because they didn't bring anything outside the box. The veterans weren't there to give that rub and that advice to teach them how to escape that, you know, just mechanical character that they were put into and just make it their own. And that's what the veterans are meant to do, and that's what they're meant to do. They should be taking that control. Not everybody needs to be that locker room leader, but try to teach and support and build that confidence, like you were saying.
Some form of advice. You know, I remember the first time I seen Jordan Rowe. He was playing Mini Hogan, and it was one of the most brilliant things I've ever seen, because it's a brilliant gimmick. It's hilarious gimmick. The guy, you know,
he's great.
I don't even think he's 18 yet. I'm like,
no,
I don't
he's still
think
in high school.
Yeah, but I mean, look at the talent.
I think he's going into his senior year next year.
Exactly.
Jordan Rowe was somebody who, he was one of the first owners to approach me when I was PPF World Champion to go to Federation.
Before Glazing Naps and Minix UPW, he actually owned the original Underground Promo Wrestling. And this is no knock to Minix UPW. Yeah, because I know I was in his fed for a while, and, you know, a little bit. I managed to have a good run there, and friends. He's a good promoter. He's I don't know if he's held a world title or not.
I don't know if he has, but goddamn, he has got the potential to.
I think he has in TOPW.
So maybe there. But I bet you he could. He's back now. He's busy with school. He's quite the young wrestler. But I tell you what, that promoing wise, holy, and but
That's
that just disappears, and it just after so long being gone for so long, people starts to forget about him after a while. This is no knock to Jordan, but it's just after being gone so long, people says, and
he's back. He's back now.
He's back.
He made
He's
his
Gary.
Yeah,
I saw it. I saw it. I've seen it.
I'm talking about in the mainstream promo wrestling world. This is no knock
he'll
to
be
Gary
back.
either. I'm talking about in like PWA and stuff like that, major feds.
Jordan and I, we're cool, and if he wants to come to PWA, he doesn't. I'm well familiar with Jordan, and I feel he doesn't need to go to developmental.
Me and Jordan, we've always been cool together. I mean, I've helped him run his fed before.
He's a good. Oh, carry on, Ryan.
I'm sorry. What were you gonna say?
Oh no, I was just gonna say he like you said, he doesn't need to go to development. I don't think so either. But that's a guy who will, you bring him back into a fed like that, he'll get all the support in the world from veterans.
And two, maybe he needs to build that confidence back up too, which is developmental.
Yeah.
You don't have to be there forever. You could be there for a couple of weeks if you want to just get your feet wet for a bit and just taste it, so you get that feel for it. That's fine, but that's something I talk about with those individuals. And when I'm unfamiliar with somebody, we usually send them right there. But I'm well familiar with Jordan, and I've heard many different veterans. With the Attitude Era, the work rate wasn't near what it was today, but all the attention was set on the Attitude Era because of the promos.
Mm-hmm.
Promos really bring a lot of eyes. The eyes gravitate toward greatness, as Steinbomb would say. And in promo wrestling, you can really get a lot of support and really get a lot of eyes. And I watched that Minnick interview from the other day, and it was fantastic. I learned a lot about Matt I didn't know, and it was awesome. And in doing so, I saw that, and I just thought he did a great job telling what his vision was for TOPW. Where he wants to go, and I think he has big plans. I think a lot of things he said would be awesome. He is an innovator, you know what I mean? And him and I bounce ideas off each other all the time. I try to be an innovator as much as possible. I try to not copy, and I try to just keep it fresh to PWA. And a big secret to it all is just keep it ever evolving. A lot of people, shit on Roman Reigns and don't know why, but I know why I shit on Roman Reigns. And I think he's a great guy personally. I've heard him on the Jericho podcast, and I don't know him personally, but it came off really well, and I thought he was an awesome guy from what I heard. But the reason I don't like Roman Reigns is because he doesn't evolve. He is the only guy from the field who has not evolved, and that's the secret, is you got to keep it fresh. The Undertaker had such a great career because he evolved.
I think that's the problem with Dean Ambrose currently.
Yes.
They're not evolving his character. He's starting to go stale, and everybody sees it. They're saying, wait a minute, turn him heel, because when he was heel with Shield, he was good.
Yeah, he's a great heel.
That's the biggest thing. In promo wrestling, it's the exact same situation, and actually maybe even more so, because you're probably cranking out way more promos than guys in WWE do. You're going longer, you're saying more, you're in more feds. So if you're doing the same thing, even for like a few months, you start to fall into that sort of even Bray Wyatt trap where you're saying the same thing over and over and over again.
It's meaningless. It means nothing at that point, and nobody wants to hear you because they expect it to be the same thing, and everybody's already tuned out.
Exactly. You're not bringing nothing new to the table. People aren't interested. People are refs at that point, get fatigued trying to ref the stuff because it's like, I seen this exact same promo last week against someone else. I think that's a fabulous point you brought up. Like
what a great word you used. Word of the day. Fabulous.
Oh, fabulous. Oh, there you go. Well, of course you would love fabulous. So one of the things I'm going to ask, because we're kind of getting close to the end of the time here, but I'm like incredibly curious because we had talked about it earlier in terms of what drives us as promo wrestlers, what drives us to stay in this community, to stay active. And I had brought up creativity, competitiveness, and community, the 3 C's. I'm curious to find out, I mean, I'm sure it's an element of all 3, but you know, if you had to pick the sort of one that shines out of that creativity, of that competitiveness, of that community, what's the one driving factor more than anything that you find keeps you entrenched, keeps you doing this, keeps, even with the family, keeps you up till 2 a.m. doing a podcast about it? What is it?
Wow. Yeah, that too. I wasn't thinking about it like that. My dedication, I would think, comes from the community, but my intrigue comes from my creativity release. So it's what was the other C? Competitiveness. Oh yeah, and I can be quite competitive, and I get the motivation when I'm facing people I'm familiar with, and I'm familiar with a lot of people. But that drives me, the competitive nature to win. And when I came back to PPF, when it was recently brought back to life by Tim Iverson and JJ Torres, Fred Peggs was giving it, but he's got all kinds of Donnie Jackson things going on. So basically, when I came back to that, I won a match. I came back, but I was not satisfied with my score. And the reason was I got my reason for why I was given the score, and I won my match against 2 individuals in a triple threat. That's awesome. I won my match, but I didn't think I lived up to that expectation I had of myself for returning to PPF after having a 9-month undefeated reign. And, with that, it just kind of like disappointed me. And I was like, I had to talk with them, and I was like, I don't think it'll ever get back to that caliber of PPF for Steinbomb. Even if I refresh it and everything, and my gears are focused on CPW, UPW, and PWA, along with FPW. Those are the 4 places that I'm focused right now. And PPF, unfortunately, isn't on my radar as far as competition goes. And I was talking to Matt about this, and he agreed with my analogy of UPW being like in New Japan, and PWA being a lot like WWE. And we didn't take CPW into account in this conversation, so no disrespect to CPW, because I love CPW. I am currently the Lionheart champion of CPW, and I'm very proud to carry on that Lionheart championship, from which Thomas Austin was, it was named after. He was the roulette champion, the only one, and to carry on that championship is a compliment in itself. So I'm very proud of that championship. But it's like WWE is PWA, and NJPW is UPW, and we felt like the other promotions are almost like indie territories in a way. To own your character, get familiar with how it is, and then once you learn of the other territories, you find these other monstrous animals. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it's no disrespect to the other territories, because they're ran fantastically. It's just the way the attention is right now. I hear, and I'm not saying it because it's my own opinion, I'm just saying it because I hear a lot of people say the big 3 are CPW, PWA, and UPW. And that's what I hear. So that's why I say that. And it's not me just blowing smoke up my ass. It's me just stating it like it is from what I hear.
Well, I certainly hear the same thing. I'm sure Mullins would even agree. When I started to get back into
the podcast.
Yeah, even when I started to get back into competing here, which, on a full-time regular basis, it was those 3. Those are the 3 I'm going to go to, and those are the 3 I'm going to be most active in. PWS has its events, and that's a whole different breed, because it's not an everyday fed. And so that's a really good blend for what you have in these. Like you said, monstrous is probably the best word to describe it, because this Goliath collection of elite talent. I mean, elite. And so it's just you guys really have something great going on.
So elite, it's radical. Just wanted to say.
There you go. But I think that I think even when we talked about the 3 C's, I think as well, from the impression I get, even just from this conversation, but what I hear from others, Ryan, I think you as well, community driven, even just in how, your moves, you talked about, when you'd go to make a move, you didn't just make it. You talked to the people that it would impact, and you got their, sort of not permission, but you talked it through with them, and you discussed and you made it fair to them. And that was in every one of your moves. And even when you want to introduce interference, well, guess what? You're going to put it to a vote. I think one of the best things about you as a Fed owner, as a competitor, is community. I think you're someone who's a very positive member of this community. That's what we need more of, in my opinion. I'm not saying not lots of people are like that, but I think you're a shining example of that, and how, there's a lot of backstabbing that can happen in these Feds and a lot of craziness and whatnot. But
I've done it. I will admit, it's happened. It gets the best of you sometimes.
Exactly. And, and sometimes it's easy to fly off the handle because there is emotions. I mean, we're saying stuff to each other and we're embattled in the trenches, but those open lines of communication and with, the people that are in your Fed, but also the people that operate it and run it, and the lessons even you shared about, even with the GM, I think that's a glowing example of that. I think you should be really proud of that as well.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. That's humbling. I thank you.
No worries. And, like I said, we're kind of getting close to the end here, and I'll give Mullins here. Mullins, do you have anything else you want to ask?
Yeah, on the interference thing, I think in order for the interference to count, it has to be really good, and keep like a time limit on the interference promos, like minutes. I think that would be perfect for interference promos, because they don't need to be 3 to 4 or 5 minutes long just to.
That's a great suggestion.
A minute or 2 minutes long. That's it.
Beautiful.
I may incorporate that's a fantastic suggestion. Definitely. And when I do make these decisions, I approach, Mike, Josh, and Procopio, and I get their take on it. I try to assess every decision that I make before making it.
Right.
Now you got a big event coming up here this weekend for PWA.
Yes. Thank you.
To rep myself, but hey, me and Thomas Austin, the legend of the pinfalls, going for tag team championship gold. People, tune in.
I try to reunite
tune in.
You wouldn't have it. What's up with that?
I believe the Perfect 7 is going to be in the Open Battle Royal, from what I understand, for number 1 contender. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I saw the promo. The match hasn't happened yet, but tune in. It's going to be live from. It's going to be live from Kirikan Hall in Japan. We got approved to have Triple M on the show. He's been banned from Japan, but I did work out with Customs to get this one fabulous favor given to me, in respect. So tune in so you can see once in a lifetime Triple M unbanned from Japan. And it's going to be Destiny Road.
Would be a good. That'd be good, like a good card to build up around him, like based in Japan, like not Triple H.
Yeah.
I mean,
I know what you mean. Posters everywhere. Posters everywhere. Masks. All the kiddies on the streets wearing Triple M masks.
Yeah.
So the dragon would be a Triple M mask. But with that, it's Destiny Road. It's this weekend. It's on our way to WrestleCade, which is in mid-July, and that's our big event. We have 4 big events: Rumble Wreckage, WrestleCade, High State, or what is it? Man, I forget the other 2. We just created the other 2. So
you got Festivus for the rest of it.
Festivus for the rest of us is the one. Yes, that's our holiday.
That's the
event,
best one.
And that is the best one. I completely agree. The other one's called Heat Stroke. I can't believe it escaped my mind. And then each one of the free previews, just to let everybody know, are going to have their own separate free previews after WrestleCade, 2 weeks apart from each other, similar to how Raw and SmackDown are today, to where you have 2 free previews a month, and they're a month apart from each other. So that's the direction we're going right after WrestleCade, and I am hoping for the best success with it. So far, this brand split, this draft, Michael Procopio coming on as GM in my eyes is a bit of a CPW merger. I don't mean to say it like that, but he was in charge of CPW for a long time.
Yeah, I noticed.
Ishmael,
When
and
I
Ishmael
went into the
does an
break
amazing
for
job.
CPW, I noticed that.
And I'll say,
He was no longer GM.
yeah, exactly. And the timing just fell right. You know what I mean? And that's what it is. You only get so many opportunities in life, and timing is key. So you have to pay attention when those opportunities present themselves and try to grab onto them when you recognize them. And
Right.
Michael Procopio was an opportunity because Dylan Mays and I were not seeing eye to eye, and he was the other GM that I had in mind. And it's so funny because he is right now doing an amazing job as the GM, best GM on Tuesday nights, as far as I am saying. In CPW.
You guys, it's exciting times. This is going to be a massive weekend. There's a lot of really good promos that are going to be flung around, but you guys over in PWA, it's going to be a great card, stacked. If you're not in PWA, if you're not active, if you're active elsewhere, go give it a look. This going to be one of the best examples of the talent there. I mean, you're going to get it every week, but this
and I do want to say, my inbox is always open if you're a talent and you're not sure, because it is intimidating, because as you did say earlier on, there's elite talent in PWA. And even if you're just getting into this, approach me. Feel free to get at me. We can work out to where you go to developmental. We can help you learn and own a character and learn how to tell a story with an opponent and make it get over and get people interested and want to tune in, put those asses in the seats.
Well, and like I said, if you're looking for a federation that is going to support you, you'd be hard-pressed to find anything better than PWA. And you, Ryan, I have to say as well, I talked about the community. Like you said, your inbox is always open. You're always available to talk. You're always active. That's fantastic. So
Thank you.
I think you guys are doing awesome. This weekend's going to be, hey, tomorrow's Friday. This is great.
Yes. It's an exciting time.
I know I'm pumped up. Congratulations on where it's come. And
thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
You put in a ton of work, both as competitor, owner. Really be proud. And thanks for joining us. Mullins,
thanks for having me. It was a pleasure just to be here with you two. I love the show. So it was astounding. It was just great. I look forward to tuning in each and every week.
Awesome. Mullins, anything else you want to add?
Not really.
All right. Well, once again, we're going to close it with hashtag Mullins Stop the Leather. Stop with the leather. And one day we will get Mullins to officially stop with the leather. But in the meantime, we're going to close it off. Thank you once again, Ryan, for joining us. Yes. Thank you all for joining us. And have yourselves a nice weekend. But stay plugged in. Stay plugged into Promo Wrestling, because it's a damn fine weekend to be a fan, competitor, or a leather entrepreneur.